and adjust everything. Oh, thanks, Jill. I was just getting ready to hit that record button. Thank you. As we move forward each day and each week in this process, we've said it many times over, it's uncharted territory, a path we've not walked before. And so we're really learning along the way, and we're going to continue to be tweaking and adjusting things as needed. So thank you. That feedback is incredibly helpful. I mentioned just a few moments ago about the new Instagram handle for St. Anne's. St. Anne's Herons with an ST abbreviation. So please, if you don't already use Instagram, it's a great way to stay connected. And if you do, please be sure to follow us and to share and tag St. Anne's with all of the things you're doing at home. It's been great to see the kids. It's been great to see our families and to be able to stay in touch that way. Also, thank you for those of you who join us for our Friday morning pod devotions and for Wednesday chapel. As a reminder, this coming week we will do chapel on Thursday at 4:30 p.m. In celebration of Tenebrae as we prepare to enter Holy Week and the Easter holiday. We also, just as a reminder, will not have any lessons or activities and meets on Friday, observance of Good Friday, but we will reclaim Easter Monday as the day of learning. So school will resume as planned on that Monday instead of taking the day off, which we had originally planned when we were in session. A physical session, I guess I should say. So, hi Edgar family. What I'd like to do, because today's focus is really an opportunity for parents to have some time to hear from Pillai Payne, our school counselor, about some suggestions and recommendations and how to help your kids manage and sort of wrestle with the challenges that this unusual time has presented us with. So she's going to talk a little bit about that, and then there'll be some time for questions. So just like we've done every Saturday, we're going to ask you to drop the questions into the chat box. It's in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and I will go ahead and moderate those questions for Pillai. At the beginning of this chat, I pasted 3 links that Pillai shared with us. They're great resources for how to talk to your kids about what's going on. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Pillai Payne.
Hi, I'm so happy to be with all of you this morning. I do want to encourage you throughout, or even right now, if you have any questions, to kind of ask them. I'll just, weave them into the presentation. So there's some things that I want to go over, but I want to also make sure that everyone's needs are kind of met. In this time, kind of dealing with COVID-19, we're seeing that children are dealing with anxiety as well as maybe some symptoms of sadness. I don't like to use the word depression. It is possible, but I think a lot of what we're seeing with kids is, an increased sadness, feeling of grief, things of that nature. Typically, it's for 2 reasons, or 2 reasons can be causing it. Of course, other things as well. But one, just what does this virus mean for me and my family? And the second thing is, how to kind of handle this different kind of school structure. So I want to start by kind of talking about the virus. What does it mean for me? What does it mean for my family? What does it mean for my grandparents? Clearly, we know that this, affects everyone, but it does talk about people that are immune compromised as well as older people. Children clearly aren't able to see people that they're used to seeing, like their grandparents. If children are separated, I have parents that are separated. It's possible, I know a lot of parents are saying, well, we're just going to stay at this house and we'll either Skype or talk to the other parent. So how do we have those conversations, and how do we, make sure that, we're dealing with this in an appropriate way? So the first thing I always say is we want to say everything in an age-appropriate way. So this is really going to change. We're not going to explain it to a 3-year-old the same way we're going to explain it to our 9-year-old, right? we have to be very mindful as well. I just want to put this out here of the news, and that's for us as well as adults, but especially our kids, because I think they can hear a lot of messages that we don't, even know they're taking in with the news. So we want to be mindful of the news and the amount of news that they're watching. For some of the older kids, probably like 10 plus, it's okay to watch the news for a little bit and then kind of move on. For kids 9 under, we want to be very careful with how they're learning information. I would suggest, maybe sharing an article with them or having a conversation with them. For a very little kid, you're going to explain, there's germs, and because there's germs, we have to stay in the house, right? It's a very conversation on their level. For someone who's 8 or 9, we're going to go a little bit more into maybe some of the science about it, but then we're also going to figure out effective ways to cope, right? So kind of understanding what it is, and if we are feeling sad, we are feeling upset, we are feeling nervous, we're going to let our kids express how they're feeling. We're going to validate those feelings, and then we're going to make sure that they have effective coping skills to deal with those feelings. So clearly, the different ages, they're going to need different coping skills. For all of them, breathing is a great coping skill, even for adults as well, teenagers, because you are getting oxygen, air to your head, and it's making you able to think and, proceed more clearly. Reframing thoughts, trying to have more positive thoughts. These are things that we can teach some of the older kids, probably 5, 6 up, if they're having very negative thoughts. We want to be mindful of rituals and just make sure that, they're not doing any rituals, because that could be an indication of something else. The most important part of all of this is that they're going to model how we act. So if we're super nervous, that's okay, right? Because a lot of things are happening, and we can share with them that we are nervous in a appropriate manner for their age, and then talk about ways that we are handling it and we're coping with it. And what's great about children is that they're going to model how we handle it. So it's very important to kind of express your feelings, have them express their feelings, to validate their feelings so they feel heard, so they feel seen, and they feel safe. This is a safe space. So even though things are very different, we're still creating a safe space where you can express yourself and we can move forward, okay? If someone is dealing with a family member that has COVID-19, parents ask me, like, should I be honest? Should I tell the kid what's going on? Should I keep it a secret? These types of questions, right? And these are really important questions. And the answer is we really do need to be honest with children. Age appropriate, but honest with children. And this is something as well, if any families are dealing with this, and I'll talk about it later, but you can kind of contact me personally and we can talk about what makes the most sense and how we should share this with the child. But we don't want to keep secrets from them. We just want to make sure that we're giving information in an appropriate manner. All right. There are some kids as well that will have so much anxiety, but maybe there's not a real risk. Maybe they're making this bigger than it is. And it's very hard to kind of tell, and we don't want to invalidate their feelings, especially for this age. It doesn't matter so much if their story makes sense. We just want to encourage them to be able to tell their story. Does anyone have any questions about that? Because that's just very different than older kids. We want to make sure that's making sense and there's not too many like cognitive distortions. At this age, we're really focusing on them being able to express themselves and creating a safe space. What you'll also see that's very common is that some kids will revert back to younger behaviors, which I think can become very frustrating for parents, because parents are like, well, we're making so much progress and now they're acting younger. That's very normal. And what we want to encourage, right? The good thing about that is that they feel safe to do that with you. So we want to encourage them to feel safe, but we also want to point it out to them. Like, I noticed that you're, reverting. I use the example. I have some parents that are telling me that their teenagers are like crawling in bed with them and cuddling with them. And they're like, oh, I kind of like it, right? Because they haven't done that in years, but it is a bit of a reverting behavior because, things don't feel safe. So we want to encourage them that this is safe. We also want to, encourage them to be independent. We want to encourage them to use coping skills. So we're just really trying to find a balance. Does anyone have any questions as far as like children being anxious or nervous about the virus before I move on to kind of school and structure anxiety. Okay. All right. And if questions come up, oh, did you want to?
And maybe you're going to do this in a few minutes, and if so, that's okay. Stick with your plan. But I wonder if you might talk a little bit about what you mean by rituals.
Yes. Okay. So I can go through that. It's normal to feel anxiety, and we want to encourage kids to feel what they're feeling and express what they're feeling. Sometimes, though, especially when things like this happen, it can create symptoms, right? And I don't want to over pathologize, but it can create symptoms that we have to be aware of. So if we see a child doing a ritual or having some bizarre thoughts, so what that looks like is, if I don't step on this crack 3 times, my mom might get COVID-19, right? Those are things we want to be aware of, because those are things that we would definitely have to have a different therapeutic intervention. And that's fine. We really would want to nip that in the bud if we saw things like that. Some of the ones that you don't see so much that are rituals, you might have a child that's like, all right, I have to say goodnight to mom, then I have to say goodnight to dad, then I have to read a book, and then I need to go to sleep, right? And so in a normal child, maybe if this doesn't happen, they'll cry, they'll be a little upset. But in a child that maybe is showing a little bit more OCD symptoms, right, they might start crying and saying, if I don't do this, this is going to happen, or this is going to happen. And when you start to hear some of those like abnormal thoughts, that just means we need a little different intervention, which is totally fine and something we can do. But I just want parents to be aware of that. Does that answer the question? Okay. Just want everyone to be aware. The second thing that we really want to focus on as far as like anxiety and sadness is working at home. Now, some kids are not going to have any issues. They're going to transition and it's going to be fine. Other children will have more issues transitioning, and that's okay. And we want to make sure they understand that's okay. And we want to use this opportunity to kind of build frustration tolerance and then build executive functioning skills, in essence. So the first thing that's really important is structure. Visual schedules are huge, right? We're not looking for perfection. Some kids are going to really struggle to sit for a long period of time and complete their work. What we're looking for is that each day you're able to do it for longer periods of time. I encourage parents to give breaks because this is different, right? We are able to, learn and create skills, but kids don't develop these skills completely until they're 25 anyway. So we're just kind of giving them resources to be able to do that. The most important thing is that we want them to express verbally what is going on. We don't want them acting out. We don't want them, throwing something. I'm sure that we're seeing an increased crying, but we want them to be able to want to hear them because they're expressing themselves. We want to reward them or incentivize them for expressing themselves. And then we want to make sure that they're getting back to their work and doing what they need to do to be successful. That is huge. And I think especially now, like, it builds cognitive flexibility. It's a life skill that they're going to use forever. So it's kind of this is a horrible situation, but it is a great opportunity to kind of build these skills. Again, we're not looking for perfection. We're just looking to kind of help them grow and build these skills. I'm just looking at my notes really quickly because I'm forgetting. Okay. So the other thing with structure and why it's super important is because things are just all over the place that we just want to make sure that it's as much as we can create something that is the same, we're creating the same. So kids thrive in structure, especially this age group. All right. Does anyone have any questions?
We have a question for you, Palai. This is from the Getting family. Stone doesn't seem to ask any questions about what is going on. He thinks we're on a long break. Should I talk to him more about it, even if he isn't asking? I know he overhears us talking. I check in with him with questions like, how are you feeling? Is anything worrying you? But he doesn't have much feedback to respond to. And this is from a preschooler, so 3 years old.
If he's not asking about it and you're giving him space to talk about it and he doesn't have any concerns, I would leave it alone. We don't want to create anything. If he knows what's going on, he's able to cope and he's able to move forward, he's fine. I think, and I always say this, like, kids kind of model what we do. They do model what we do, right? They're going to model how we react. So he probably sees you handling it in a okay way. He feels safe and he's good. So we're just going to leave him feeling good, feeling safe. And if he does have questions, kids will come and they'll ask you. They're good at definitely like asking and when they need clarification.
Hi. I have a question about structure that's come from several of our family members just in conversations that I've had. And I've attempted to give some guidance, but I welcome your thoughts on this. We have lots of families who, in addition to trying to develop structure and routine for their kids with school at home now, they're also juggling the fact that they are doing their jobs out at home. So where kids in the past have seen mom or dad leave the house to go to work and they know how to make that distinction of, mommy's working or daddy's working, now how do we help our kids understand that, and how do we help our families manage the stress of, mommy's working right now and this is, what you need to do? Because I think those routines are challenging for all of us, and in some cases it might not be a job outside the home, but just the things that we need to do to keep our household going.
Yes, so that's actually a great question. So in these times, I think we all need to be forgiving with ourselves and realize that it's not going to be perfect. I think we start there, right? Lisa and I were kind of talking about this earlier, where you kind of want to, if there's a meeting that like they absolutely cannot come in, maybe putting a sign on the door and making them know, like, when this sign's here, unless it's an emergency, and explaining what an emergency is, you can't come in the room, right? There are going to be times where the computer doesn't work. They're going to want you. There's going to, they're mom, dad, right? So kind of, explain to them that this is the work day. Depending on the age, you might also need to use incentives. So you can have a behavioral chart, right? And behavioral charts have to be connected to the function of the behavior. So if the behavior is for attention, then let's say you have a behavioral chart, you get this many stars, you get to spend this much time with dad at, outside, right? Because we have limited, and you get to spend this much time with dad outside if you don't interrupt the meeting for 45 minutes, right? So we want to do things that are very visual, that they can see, that are linked to the function of their behavior, right? So a lot of behavior too is that they want to get something. So we want to try as much as possible to have the things as far as like, school and that stuff together. But sometimes the internet is going to go out and you have to have the conversation. Do you want, does mom want me to interrupt her during her meeting? Or is it going to be okay if the internet goes out and we'll make it through and, St. Anne's will tape the class? But I think behavioral charts are your best friend. We'll talk a little bit later, but we are kind of offering, maybe one session if we need some parenting help with this situation, and I can kind of help you kind of figure out what the function of behavior is, and then create a visual plan for your child to kind of create these boundaries in a healthy, and hopefully productive way. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. And, I just want to remind parents too, that in that message of it doesn't have to be perfect, to also remember that you don't have to check every box every single day. So, give yourself the grace to sort of let things go and prioritize, and reach out to us if you need some help prioritizing from a school standpoint. As a mom, my piece of advice is also for parents, allow yourself to let the laundry pile up if it needs to too. I can be pretty critical with myself about the dishes overflowing and things like that. But I think we have to give ourselves some grace in all of these facets of life we're trying to juggle right now.
And sometimes the expectation, it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. It's not, we're going to get through, and that's more the goal, I think, than perfection. I'm trying to think if there's, somebody did also ask me about that we have some parents that are doctors, and that some kids are nervous about their parents, going out, the risk that their parents are, under. I think there's a couple things. I think one, we need to be really mindful of what our kids are hearing and what conversations. Again, we want to be honest with them, but we want to be age appropriate. So if we are having maybe some really, tough conversations with other family members or, with our spouses or with different people, we want to make sure that that's not something they're hearing, that what we're having our kids hear is very controlled. Again, we don't want them to not know what's going on, but especially at this age, especially when you're talking about the 4 and 6 and that age, we want to kind of control the narrative. This is a very different conversation. If you have like a 12-year-old, right, we're going to have a different conversation. But for this age group, we do want to control the narrative. It's normal that they would feel nervous. I mean, my best friend is an RN and I'm nervous for her, right? Telling them, because there is a risk that you can get sick, right? Depending on, where you're working, right? So kind of being honest with them, but also sharing maybe some of the precautions that you're using. Sharing some of the things that the hospital is doing to help you through this time can also be very helpful. Some of it also is just accepting what it is and committing to what you as a family are going to do to move forward through this time, because some of these things we can't change, right? What we can do is try, what we definitely can do is, meditation, coping as far as breathing. Bubbles is really great for little kids if you want to teach them how to breathe. We can play with Play-Doh. We can use sensory things. We can do things to make ourselves feel better, to reduce our anxiety till we get through this. This is not forever, right? I don't know if anyone has any questions about that specifically. But that is something that kids, struggle with. I mean, they want to make sure that their parents are safe. They want to be safe, and they want to make sure that you guys are safe. So that, it makes a lot of sense that they would have anxiety around those things.
Polly, are there warning signs that you maybe can, I guess, like the rituals that you mentioned before, other things that, because I think a lot of what you're sharing and a lot of what we're seeing with different behaviors and increased crying and things like that are all within the normal range right now. But I just wonder if there are some guidelines you might be able to give parents in addition to the rituals, like of when do I need to ask for more help? When do I need to ask for more than what I think I can manage at home right now?
So first you need to check in with yourself, right? Because some of it is very individual. So depending on, what your work schedule looks like, what's happening around you, it could be very different for different parents, right? Some parents might have the time to sit there for an hour and to kind of handle a meltdown, and to, other parents, they might not have that and need additional help to kind of support their kid. And there's no judgment either way, right? Because the goal is that we're healthy, we're moving forward, we're doing what we need to do. So there's no judgment. If you're seeing rituals, though, that's a definite sign that you need to get more help. If you're seeing your kids not do things that they used to enjoy or used to want to do, that is also kind of should be a red flag. So what I mean by that is if your kid really likes to go outside, and, you guys decide, okay, we're going to take a walk around the neighborhood, and they're like, I'm not stepping outside, right? That's a red flag. And you're like, no, my kid loves to go outside, to do things. That's definitely, I probably need to get some more help, and just check in. And I guess I'll just tell you guys now, we are offering, safe sessions if people do need things specific to COVID-19 where they can talk to me on a tele platform. If there are just some, some things that they're like, I'm just not sure about that. And if you email Lisa, everything will be confidential and you can kind of, I'm seeing this, this, and this. And it might really just be like one session we talk and we kind of figure out a plan. But that resource is available. But the two biggest things, if you see them not doing things that they used to really enjoy doing, it's red flag. Oh, yeah, that I can't quite read that. Can you read that question to me?
Yes. Warning signs include bedwetting, not wanting to sleep in their own bed, crying, temper tantrums, changes in eating patterns, etc.
Yeah. So the bedwetting would be, so yes, thank you so much. Not wanting to sleep in their own bed is pretty normal. I would say, let's say that's pretty in the normal range. We don't want to start that, especially if we stopped it. So it depends on, let me say this, it depends on what you want to do. Some parents will say, okay, you can sleep in my bed tonight, and then just for comfort, and then the next night, we got to go back to your bedroom. You don't want to start a situation, though, where you maybe have gotten them out of your bed and now they are back in your bed, right? Because that is hard to do, and it's could be a very long scaffolding process. But yes, that is a sign that a lot of kids are doing. Bedwetting is a little bit more concerning to me. Yeah, temper tantrums, that's going to happen. Eating patterns is something else that's pretty concerning, and you want to kind of, really be looking out for. Thank you for that. Thank you. Any other questions or concerns?
Can I jump in for a minute, Paul?
Oh, yes.
You and I had a great conversation about incentives / rewards for kids, because so much of, I think, incentives for kids were being able to play a game on the Switch or, doing something on the iPad. And I know with so much screen time now, could you give some examples of some of the things you and I talked about in terms of rewards and incentives for kids?
So we have to be quite creative, right, with kids as far as incentives. So some things that we talked about, I know, especially if it gets a little bit warmer, water balloon fights are a huge one. So kind of like if you're able to get all your work done and do everything you need to do, we can have a water balloon fight. We talked about karaoke, a karaoke night, a game night. Some kids like to cook, so cooking or baking with mom and dad could be something really fun. If your kids are into puzzles or Legos, that can be another thing that can be super fun activity that they can earn. And I always say, like, sometimes there's things that you're going to do anyway. So if you can make it an incentive and use it to your favor, that's always good. So I use the example, you're probably going to give them dessert, or you might. So maybe spice it up. You have, really tasty sundaes because you did such a great job, getting your work done and not bothering mommy while she was in the computer room, right? And you probably want that sundae too. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone. Yeah, we have to be really creative, and we clearly we don't want them to have so much screen time. And if we can kind of move that to the weekend because they're already on the computer for school at this point, it's better. It's just a better setup for them. So that's, what we encourage. Again, the other thing can be very incentive. It can be quite a good incentive. So, it's hard for parents. And again, there's no judgment. We're really just trying to get through this time and make sure that our kids are educated and they're healthy socially, emotionally, and things of that nature.
Palai, is it fair to say also that incentives, much like we do when we're in school, should be geared more toward a connection or an enjoyable moment, as opposed to a tangible toy that you would order online or something like that?
It depends on the child, and it depends on what's going on. That's the ideal. That is totally the ideal, right? It doesn't work for every kid.
Yeah.
Sometimes, what I do say though, if you're going to do something that's if you're going to do something that's tangible, you want to make sure it's something that they're building up to. So you have a star chart. They have to get so many stars to get that tangible item. Yes, ideally, and a lot of kids can do it really fine. And again, I don't want to put in judgment. You know, the time with mom and dad, it works fine and they're happy. But there are some kids that if you purchasing something will be an incentive. It's kind of like a paycheck, I would say. Like some people go to work and they love it and love what they do, and other people, if they don't get paid, they're not going to work. So
I think your point about no judgment is a good one. Right now, you know, in some cases it's about survival for us, and like mentally surviving, you know, each day and the challenges we're facing.
And I wouldn't start with the tangible, but just realistically, sometimes it does. It can be quite a helpful resource that way.
Thanks. All right. We are approaching the end of our time together. Are there any other questions that we can answer for you?
Just in this space, I just want to say that if you do want to go through St. Anne's for a parent session, and or you think your kid is struggling, we are offering services, teletherapy for children. If the child is younger, though, the parent will have to be there, at least for the first session, just to see how things go and to see if they can manage on their own. When I'm saying younger, I'm saying like below 5. The second thing that I think is important as well is that if you didn't want to go through St. Anne's, a lot of insurance companies are not doing co-pays right now. And I can also help you find someone if you're not trying to go through St. Anne's. So that's also another resource that you can use. And they're not collecting co-pays, most insurances, till June. So that's really kind of awesome resource that we have.
Great. Anybody else have any other questions? All right. Pillai, thank you so much for sharing your time with us this morning, your expertise and your resources. Again, in the top of this chat, if you scroll up, I have 3 links, and I will also share those out in my future communications with you. 3 great resources. There's lots of stuff out there. We're just, trying to provide as much support as we can. At St. Anne's, one of the things we really focus on is the whole child. And so the social, emotional health and well-being of your child is equally as important as their academic growth. And it's all uniquely and intrinsically sort of tied together in a way that we need to make sure we're taking care of the whole child and working together to provide that support. So thank you, Pillai. This is really helpful.
Thank you.
So next Saturday, we will not have a coffee due to the Easter holiday, but continue to look for communication to come from the school and obviously your connection with the teachers. And I just want to say again, please do not hesitate to reach out to us with questions, comments, any feedback. It's all extremely helpful as we navigate this journey together. And I'm so grateful and thankful for all of you and for this St. Anne's community. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. It's great to see all these smiling faces, and hi, Ava, and some faces of the kids. So be well, stay safe, and know that you are loved. Bye-bye.